It might seem like you see Canada geese everywhere.
But the bird was only introduced to Vermont 70 years ago and is still monitored closely today. And it's not always an easy process. In this week's Wildlife Watch, I joined Vermont Fish and Wildlife as they banned Canada geese. In Arnold Bay on Lake Champlain, Vermont Fish and Wildlife crews are not just enjoying a time out on canoes, they are strategically moving this flock of geese to shore.
They're resident Canada geese that basically they don't migrate any further north than here, so they breed here. Basically, we've got two separate populations of geese that use Vermont.
As the geese get closer,
Pen's all set up whenever you guys are ready.
Team members are prepping a pen to corral the geese on shore, which the geese calmly enter, but it quickly turns into controlled chaos.
We're rounding them up right now because they're in a flightless period. They lose all their flight feathers at once. So we're able to round them up and herd them into a pen.
That's when the biologists examine the birds.
I'll get them flipped upside down, get their head tucked so that they can't see quite as much. And then I'll make sure I've got a good handle on them. And I'll fold their tail feathers back so I can find their cloaca.
And ban them for recording.
We ban them to get an estimate of, or get a look at population dynamics. From the banding data, we can see sex ratios, age ratios. We can also see where the birds are going based on reported birds from hunters or birders or people that found a dead bird. These bans are all issued by the Bird Banding Lab, which is run by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's a federal program. They issue all the bans, keep track of all the data. So once we're done with our data, we submit it to the Bird Banding Lab, and they have all the records. So it's a nationwide and international program.
So after an efficient roundup in Arnold Bay, the crews head north to Vergennes with no luck.
It had been scouted, and there were 20 or so birds here, but sounds like Dave just went down to scout behind a house, and there's somebody back there doing yard work, so it probably pushed them off.
Then we head to the next location in Shelburne, where the crews have to think on their feet.
The first stop, we had a chance to kind of make a better plan and get a whole corral set up, and we just herded them right in. This time were starting to walk away, so we kind of had to jump out and run and corral them on the fly.
And as crews repeat the steps of collecting data and banding the birds, which at one point were not native to the Green Mountains.
Prior to the 1950s, we didn't have any geese in the area. They started a program in the 1950s. They did this all across the country around the same time, and turned into a huge ordeal. And so now there's resident geese pretty much all across the country.
The work they are doing is to understand the birds and keep them healthy from sickness like the avian influenza.
And it's just part of the whole flyway. We're not just Vermont by ourselves. We're working with Canada and all the states up and down the East Coast that are in the Atlantic flyway to manage this population.
We're trying to get an idea of how the population is doing. If we're not monitoring them, then all of a sudden they could disappear and we wouldn't have any idea that they were on the decline. So by getting a good population estimate, we're able to set bag limits for hunting seasons, which helps with maintaining a healthy population and monitoring how the population is doing.
In Shelburne, Ike Ben David, Channel 3 News.